What's up, everybody? You're listening to another episode of Pace and Space Podcast. It's trade deadline day, and the trade deadline has come and gone. It felt like the last week. It wasn't too active today, but we do have a big Zubats trade that we're going to talk about in a little bit. We're going to go backwards, break down every single trade over the last 48 hours, really, because that's when it started heating up earlier this week. And then we're going to go quickly, kind of give our winners, our losers, grading each trade. We're going to have a lot of fun. But there's only one place to start, because Sean Barnard and I, my good friend who's co-hosting with me, I'm Sam Oshtry, by the way. Forget the pleasantries today because there's a lot to get into.
Yeah.
Sean Barnard and I vehemently disagree on the Jared McCain trade that sent Jared McCain from the Sixers to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for the Rockets' first-round pick in 2026, this upcoming draft. So it's going to be a big debate for the probably next 20, 30, maybe the next 2 hours. We go on all day. I don't even want to ask how you're doing, but how you doing?
I'm fired up, Sam Oshtry, is how I'm doing. That the NBA trade deadline is over. There were a million trades around the NBA, and what do the Philadelphia 76ers do is sit on their hands in regards to getting better. The Sixers got worse at the NBA trade deadline, sacrificed the future of a promising young player in an indefensible organizational standpoint in the process they landed in here. There's things we can disagree on here. There's things that I think you need to come to my side of things. We will be different on how we project Jared McCain as a player. What I do think is indefensible is the process for making this decision, because the only goal that the Sixers had at this trade deadline was to duck below the luxury tax. They accomplished that and got worse as a basketball team. So I'm excited to dig in completely.
All right, so let's just go. Let's just go start with the Jared McCain trade, right? Because we differ on the motive, the result, how we view the player, how we view the trade, how we view the return. We disagree on a lot of it. So just to outline the trade, I mean, I think everyone who's listening knows this by now. But to outline the trade here, what it is a Jared McCain who's had 23 games last year as a rookie, played exceptional. He was the favorite to win Rookie of the Year last year, goes down with an injury. This year, he comes back from another injury that he suffered in the preseason, or training camp, whatever, and he's really struggling. He's not having a good year. Efficiency's off. His athleticism has diminished.
38% from three right now, mind you.
We'll get to his true shooting percentage in a second. And the Sixers kind of decide he's not part of their future or present, and they ship him off for what people could say it's not a great return, but it is a first-round pick. It's the Rockets' first-round pick. So just why is this a bad trade? Before I tell you why you're wrong, why is this a bad trade?
So I'll start with this. The motive behind this trade is 100% deducted tax. Now, they obviously traded Eric Gordon.
I disagree with you. I disagree with you from the jump. I disagree with you right there on the jump.
How?
There's the motive, but could they have ducked the tax without trading Jared McCain?
Yes, and they chose to not do that.
Okay, so what I'm saying is those two things are different. They accomplished ducking the tax by trading a player that they didn't have interest in for the present or the future. That doesn't mean they only made the trade to duck the tax. Does that make sense?
So there's two parts of this. Josh Harris and Daryl Morey both need to have their feet held to the fire here. Josh Harris is the one who makes the call. And if I could rattle off you a couple numbers right here in regards to our good pal Josh Harris right here, the Sixers have not paid the luxury tax since the 2003-2004 season. Not once under Josh Harris's tenure have they been willing to pay the luxury tax. Now, how this works, what it is directly, is the line that is supposed to basically punish big spending teams, make the competitive balance fair. To put it into perspective, that Josh Harris, across his 15 years of owning the Philadelphia 76ers, has spent $39.6 million in taxes, going above, paying slightly above. That's in the entirety of his time here. To put that into perspective, this man has a net worth of $12 billion that he owns the Washington Commanders, the New Jersey Devils, a million other business ventures here. $40 million divided by $12 billion is 0.0033. So across 15 years of him owning the Sixers, Josh Harris has spent less than a penny extra on actually investing in this Sixers team. That's embarrassing stuff. That is not an owner that cares about winning, and that is where the root of this decision started from. Now, the Daryl Morey side of things.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing, just to address that. I'm not going to defend Josh Harris and his inability or just the lack of desire to pay the task, because obviously he doesn't want to, and he prioritizes the Commanders and the Devils and all these other business ventures more than he does the Sixers, even though he never wanted to pay the tax even before he bought the Commanders. So as much as that's his priority right now, it was always a thing that he just didn't want to pay the tax. So I'm not going to defend that. I'm just saying that is a completely different conversation than did this trade happen because the Sixers had to duck the tax.
So they're related, though. They're not completely independent of each other. And my last Josh Harris factoid here is there's 4 NBA teams this season that are spending more in taxes than Josh Harris has in 15 years of owning this team. That's not an owner that gives that much of a shit about winning, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, to bring it to Daryl Morey, who's the guy who made the decision here, I get the calculus of Jared McCain might not be a long-term part of this team. That was still selling low. That trade was selling low on who Jared McCain is as a talent. That's a fake first-round pick. It's at best the 24th overall pick, and they're 3 fringe second-round picks. 2 of the 3 of them are likely to be 45 plus. What do you think are the chances are that they can draft a player of Jared McCain's caliber with any of those draft picks?
That's not the point. That's not the point. That's completely missing the point. The point is that the Sixers didn't view Jared McCain as part of their present or future. He had completely fallen out of the rotation. And there's a reason for that. Number one is because him and Maxey as a backcourt partner were concerns. Even they didn't play much together last year, but even last year. And Daryl Morey talked about that at the trade deadline when he did his press conference. He went on the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast after the season last year, the disastrous season they had. He talked about, he sounded really skeptical. If you go back and listen to that audio, He sounded really skeptical of whether these two guys could be a backcourt pairing because of how small they are and how bad they would be defensively. And you can't really, that doesn't really work unless you have elite rim protection. So that was all before VG Edgecombe came along, that there were concerns about Jared McCain's fit on this team. Then you have a guy like VG Edgecombe come along. You trade for Quentin Grimes at the deadline last year, and you have that pairing and VG Edgecombe's development and ascension as a rookie, which is more than anybody could have ever imagined. And where does Jared McCain fit? He doesn't really fit in. His ceiling, his absolute ceiling, is a bench piece, a rotational piece. And yes, of course. What do you mean wrong? He could never start in a lineup with VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey, ever. Those 3 guards.
In this specific situation, his ceiling as a basketball player is not a bench player.
I'm not saying as a basketball player. I'm saying for the Sixers. It's about the fit for the Sixers. That's what they're looking at. They don't care what his ceiling is as a player. The future is VG Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey. VG Edgecombe, by the way, you said you wouldn't even trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So this is, how does McCain fit in with those 2 guys? He was never going to be a starter alongside those 3. You can't play those 3 together. So for the Sixers, the fit didn't work long term because he was just, his ceiling was a rotational piece as a bench guy. And it's like that was the best case scenario for him. But then it's like, are you going to stagger the minutes with him and McMax together? You don't want to do that. Do him and VJ work together? You like Quentin Grimes, so you're planning on signing him next season.
Have to now.
You essentially have to, but I think that was always their plan when they were working out with everything this summer. So all those factors, it's McCain doesn't fit in. So why not sell now on this guy to get a first rounder? I'm not saying it's the greatest first rounder ever, but it is a first round pick. You can use this as an asset for a trade this summer before the draft, or you can actually draft a guy in the 20s where Morey has had pretty good success scouting unheralded talent.
So my tone would be different here. For what it's worth, my perspective coming into the trade deadline is I need one piece that I can talk myself into being a rotational upgrade. My tone would be very different on this Jared McCain trade. And I stood up last night watching the zombie Thunder play the Spurs and thinking, if Kenrich Williams came in this trade, if Jalen Williams, the second one, came in this trade, my tone would be a little bit different of talking to guys that could potentially help this team. That's not what this trade was. It was a salary dump. There's no other way to describe this trade than that.
Salary dump. You don't get a salary dump is when you attach picks to the player to dump.
They also did with Eric Gordon.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Eric Gordon was a salary dump. Jared McCain was not a salary dump. They got back a first-round pick. Like, that's a first-round pick is a valuable asset, especially for a team that didn't have one in this draft. I don't care if it's a 22nd, 23rd, 24th pick. It's still a pick. Like, that's a first-rounder.
Yeah, it is. How many points is that first-round pick scoring in this playoff run, Sam Oshtry? How many points? How do you think
Jared McCain was going to be in the rotation for this playoff run? You know he was not going to be.
I know he has a higher chance than a guy that the team has not drafted.
Okay, obviously, but Jared McCain wasn't part of this team's equation. They didn't get better this season from that trade, but they didn't get worse either because Jared McCain, Nick Nurse was not playing Jared McCain a single playoff minute. Let's just be honest about this.
So if they had realized that Jared McCain is not a future staple of this team, why do this now and not this summer where the return is absolutely better than what they just walked away with?
Why is the return better in the summer?
because he just went through a year where he did not look like himself. Think about the hype that was going on this summer.
Yeah, so why, if he goes through a full year of not looking like himself, why would the return be better in the summer? I think this was
past summer, like going into the season.
Oh, well, because a couple of reasons. Number one, I mean, you didn't know you were going to get VJ with the draft. After the draft,
did at some point, like
after the draft, I think it was worth seeing the fit play out. And then you saw the fit play out. And yeah, there are excuses for how bad Jared McCain has been this year. And let's not get
fair ones.
He's been terrible. He's been terrible this year, especially as a defender. He's been awful. But I'm not like completely out on Jared McCain. I think he can be a really good player in the NBA. But you saw the fit and you saw him struggle. You saw him move different athletically than he was last year. And you gave him half of a season. Nick Nurse obviously had no interest in playing him, really struggled defensively, struggled alongside Maxey and VJ Edgecombe. Can't play in those lineups together. And it was just like, all right, we're going to ship him out now at the deadline because you can get a decent return for him.
To me, that's an indefensible usage of assets here. That Jared McCain, to me, as a player, proved to be much more than what this return is. And mind you,
I don't think so. And especially like the return was only or the value for Jared McCain was only gonna diminish as time went on. So people are like, oh, why didn't you give him another chance? If you give him until the end of this season, he's not even in the playoff rotation. So then his value is even worse. You bring it into next season, he's probably not in the rotation either. If Quentin Grimes is back and Nick Nurse is still a coach, he's probably not in the rotation. His value's only diminishing. I actually think the Thunder overpaid for Jared McCain.
That's insane.
If you scour the league, I'm dead serious.
What did they get for Ayo Dosunmu though? What did they get for Rob Dillingham? Like, you can run down the list of the deals that went down.
Scour the league for the market for Jared McCain. He is not worth a first rounder right now. The Thunder were the only team to do it because they could afford the overpay because they have just a ton of first round assets. And so they're rich as hell. So it doesn't really matter if you overpay for something if you're that wealthy. And that's kind of what the Thunder's approach was.
And when he's going to all-star games in an Oklahoma City Thunder jersey, Sam Oshtry, like, what is your perspective?
Well, let's get one thing straight. He's not cracking that rotation this season. Number
season.
I don't
21
think,
years old. He's 21 years old.
We can talk. He's 2 years left on the deal. Then he's a restricted free agent. First things first with the Thunder. First things first with the Thunder. You have to be able to defend to step on that floor. That's an all-time great defense because every single player who plays for them is a great defender. McCain is an awful defender. So he's not going to crack the rotation this year. As you look to the future, maybe, but like he's having a bad season. And I'm not like out on McCain as a basketball player. He is a great shooter, has a ton of range, his relocation ability. We've all seen the Steph Curry comparisons, which is absurd, but there is something to a player who gets off the ball and just immediately relocates, and how hard that is for a defender or for the defense to track that guy. And he's a great shooter. He's going to get a ton of open quality looks. And there is something to that skill that not a lot of guys have, especially as rookies. So McCain's really great there. He's an underrated finisher. He's crafty around the rim. But none of that was there this year. Like, even if he was shooting the ball decently, 38% from three, his athleticism, his burst, his first step, all of it was slower. And yeah, maybe it's recovering from injury. It's the mental hurdle too, come back from 2 injuries, but it still wasn't there. He was shooting 38% from the field. His true shooting percentage was 50.6%. There are 512 players that NBA tracks for true shooting percentage this season. You know where Jared McCain ranked? 419. He was a bad player this year. And so you're selling on a guy who you didn't think was part of your present or future, and you got back a first-round pick.
I think you're crazy for viewing this season in a vacuum, dude. Like, there's completely fair excuses. Like, the reason that he has not looked like himself, there's certainly, like, the athletic burst has not been there, and I think that's tied to the meniscus. What I think has been larger, the issue with him, is tearing that ligament in his thumb before training camp. He missed training camp. He missed preseason. He missed the start of this season. It is a really hard task for a guy to learn how to fit in with players like Joel Embiid, like Paul George, like VJ Edgecombe, like Quentin Grimes, who got here after McCain did get hurt last year, and try and find your role. And I think a large part of the season, every time I watched Jared McCain, it felt like a guy who didn't have a role, was trying to figure out. Yeah. And like, I can't just overlook what happened last year. I understand it was a disgusting season.
23 games on a terrible team.
But it still matters, dude. Like, he still did this at the NBA level. There are guys that will go their entire NBA career without having remotely that flash that he showed in his rookie season right there. I don't think that was a fluke, man. I don't know if he's that good. I don't know if he can do that on a consistent sample size, but it still matters that he's capable of doing those things. We theoretically buy into players that maybe could be that, maybe could be something that Jared McCain has shown he can be at the NBA level. I just don't understand the reasoning to sacrifice a young player. So in my mind, I don't think the value would be different if they carried this into the summer. I don't see the win. And mind you, tying in the Eric Gordon deal, you can still have gotten below the luxury tax and still provided a pathway to giving Dominic Barlow and Jabari Walker standard deals without having to give up Jared McCain. I just don't get the logic.
I just want my stance to be clear because I'm not saying this is some like home run great deal, but I understand
you said overpaid. You said the Thunder overpaid, Sam.
No, I absolutely think that Thunder overpaid. I don't think the market for Jared McCain across the league was a first-round pick. I just don't. Even if it's the pick in the early to mid-20s, I just don't. And I think most people across the league would agree with that. The Thunder could just afford to overpay and take a chance on this really talented player.
Guys, zip in real quick. Isaiah Joe is a comparison, who obviously has same Sixers tied. They just cut. Jared McCain's a night and day better basketball player than Isaiah Joe.
He's not the defender Isaiah Joe is.
Isaiah Joe isn't a good defender either, man. Like
he can defend enough where the
how
Thunder.
How many playoff series have we seen Isaiah Joe get played off the floor? Because it's multiple is the answer to that. I know they won a championship. He also is in the rotation.
Jared McCain's a better player. Like I don't disagree with that. I'm not. The upside for Jared McCain is still there. He could be a really great player for the Thunder. That doesn't mean he was a great player for the Sixers, and the fit wasn't there. And you're talking about all these things of why he couldn't crack in the rotation. A lot of it is the mental hurdle, too, where he got put on the short leash. Number one, because of the guard rotation they already had with Maxey, with Edgecombe, with Quentin Grimes, and also because Nick Nurse didn't like him as a player. Like, let's just be honest. And Nick Nurse probably isn't going anywhere anytime soon, even if every Sixers fan wants him out. Nick Nurse didn't like him as a player, so he had a really short leash. That affects your mentals. And he didn't have the confidence that we saw radiating from him last season. So I'm not saying he won't be a fit somewhere else or he's not going to be a really good player for the Thunder or elsewhere. He wasn't a good fit for the Sixers team moving forward. So to get off him now and get a first-round pick in return, it's a good deal. I can understand it from Maury's perspective.
We don't fully know the direction of the Sixers franchise still moving forward. That yes, we believe in the Maxey and Edgecombe backcourt. You were the guy on here.
That's what I'm saying. If you believe in the Maxey and Edgecombe backcourt, Jared McCain's ceiling is a bench piece. And I'm not saying that doesn't matter, but his ceiling is a bench piece. And it's hard to kind of put him in lineups with certain other players when that's your backcourt.
He's a special enough offensive talent that it is worth it. There's a ton of guys who go a whole career without being an even average NBA defender. Jared McCain's probably going to be one of those guys, but he is worth it from an offensive perspective. He didn't look like the peak version of himself. I just don't understand sacrificing a young player. What is the hit rate on draft picks, Sam Oshtry? Like, how many draft picks are guys that never show any signs of promise that are far more valuable in what these picks are than what the actual player turns into? Because the rate on that is well above 50%. Like, the likelihood of any of these options being in the same category, the same tier of who Jared McCain is slim to none in my mind.
I mean, yeah, obviously it's less than 50% when you get out of the lottery. It's way less. But how often can you turn a draft pick, a late lottery draft pick, into another first rounder? And that's rare, who you don't see part of your future, which the Sixers obviously don't. Whether you agree with that or disagree with that, the Sixers do not see Jared McCain part of their future when VG Edgecombe came into the picture and emerged in the way that he did. So how often can you cut ties with a lottery pick or a non-lottery pick and get back another first rounder? That is super, super rare.
I think what I'm most offended by in this entire conversation is like the PR spins from the Sixers. Like the Shams tweet on the Eric Gordon, like this now paves the way for them to sign Dominic Barlow to a standard contract. Like, no, it didn't, dude. They had 13 players before this. They could have done this without needing to trade Eric Gordon. And by the way, they could have got on the luxury tax without trading Jared McCain. So I don't need the nonsense excuses from the Sixers. Wear this on the chest that we didn't think Jared McCain was a good enough player. We wanted the draft picks because that's where it comes from. And another quick tip for my good friend Daryl Morey. If a guy named Sam Presti picks up the phone and says, hey, I'm interested in this player right here, probably a good sign to maybe not give up on that guy.
See, I don't think it was just one reasoning where a lot of people are putting in the box of, okay, the Sixers gave up on Maxey. Don't think he's going to be a good player in this league. Don't think it was that. Some people are putting in the other box of saying this was a completely financial move and they did it to deduct the tax. Don't think it was that either. It was a combination of a bunch of factors where They didn't see McCain as part of a fit, both in the present and the future, wasn't part of Nick Nurse's real rotation, and wasn't going to be in the future when you have the emergence of VG Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey, and then you plan on re-signing Quentin Grimes. It's also the fact that, that he wasn't the same player. He lost some athleticism. He's really struggling with his efficiency. His confidence wasn't there. Maybe a new setting will help him, but it's a combination of those two things. And then also this helps us accomplish something we need to do because of our owner, which is duck the tax. So it wasn't one or the other. It was a combination of all of this that made this an understandable move from the Sixers' perspective.
We had this conversation via text before the trade went down. I want this on record, on air right here, Sam Oshtry.
Now I feel as confident as ever, yeah.
Steak dinner bet right here. Jared McCain's going to be an all-star. It's going to happen somewhere. I firmly believe that. Steak dinner bet on that.
Yeah, I don't think he's an all-star. The conversation did happen before, or the bet happened before he was even traded, because it really felt like this whole season he was trending towards being traded, just based off of how the rotations played out and how everything kind of went with him going to the G League and not him playing sporadic minutes, and then Nick Nurse obviously not trusting him, and VG Edgecombe's emergence. It always just felt like he was going to be traded. And I was telling you, no matter where he goes, I don't see him being an all-star. And it's really hard to be an all-star. It doesn't mean he's not going to be a good player in this league, a contributing player in this league for a long time. All-star, that is an absurdly high bar you're setting for him that I just don't think he's ever going to clear.
Well, I look forward to you taking me to Fogo de Chao in the year 2029, maybe 2031, somewhere in that range. And Jared McCain, to you out there, my good friend, you are welcome to join on Sam Oshtry's tab, also right there. Also pretty bummed I don't get more run out of those TikToks that I all ripped out after that disastrous year. I'm just...
Yeah, how does he not seen those? What a waste, by the way.
my take, honestly, I think he probably has and thinks I'm making fun of him, which is somewhat fair. So I can.
They brought him to the lottery last year.
Yeah,
all-time stuff. They brought him to the lottery. He brought great luck. They got the 3rd overall pick.
The last point, we can move on to more NBA stuff, but the last point that I just want to make clear here is this is such a direct middle finger to Joel Embiid. Of Joel Embiid, your franchise centerpiece, your star, who's returned closer to his MVP level than I think anyone could have thought was realistic coming into the season, stood there 6 days ago, Sam Oshtry, and was asked about his thoughts of the trade deadline. And what he said, what Joel Embiid said is, for the past couple of years, all we focused on is ducking the tax. I do hope that we are willing to look into making this team better. And what he said beyond that was not make this, extravagant trade, not take this big all-in push. He said, I want to keep continuity. We got a good squad together. We got a good group, and we got a chance this year. I hope we prioritize that. What did Josh Harris do? Trade one of the biggest vibes guys on this team for, whatever. Scraps in my mind and overpaying yours.
I didn't see a lot of moves out there as you kind of scour the market.
Dude, how many guys were traded? There were like 60 trades.
Okay, but moves that would really take their championship chances or increase their championship chances. What move could they have made that would have done that with everything that they have right now going on? Like, I don't think they got worse. My point is, I don't think they got worse.
They definitely didn't get better. They didn't bring in a single player. They traded away.
And also, as much as you're like, yeah, Joel Embiid's telling you to go all in as he's playing some of his best basketball that he was a couple years ago, or at least close to it, you're not trusting Joel Embiid to be healthy in April still. I mean, we're still in the beginning of February here. Like, let's get to April with Joel Embiid healthy. That is a long way away. So just
the trade
Joel Embiid makes
right
that demand, he's not LeBron James here.
But the trade deadline's right now, and you only get so many chances at this, Sam Oshtry, for the same reasons that you're going to nitpick at me and talk about, can we really believe that a Maxey and Edgecombe backcourt gives you a legitimate chance to win a championship? I don't know the answer to that 10 toes down right now. I would like to believe that I see the vision, I see the pathway of that being possible. What I do know right now is the Sixers have 2 guys that you catch them on their right day are clear-cut top 10 NBA players in Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. You have a wide-open Eastern Conference with not a single team that is that elite. If now is not a reason to go for it, then when is? Because this feels like a charity case business model that Josh Harris doesn't actually give any sort of care about winning. Today feels like a sad day to be a supporter of the Philadelphia 76ers. It's an embarrassing mindset to go into things.
What day does it?
I guess there have been Saturdays, so you can have me on that. But if not now, then when would be my question. The Joel Embiid window is closing. It may already be closed. But if you're not going to go for it, then you have no chance of this. And today certainly did not feel like they were going for it.
Giannis will be available this summer. Kawhi Leonard will be available this summer, which we're transitioning into a second. It's gonna be an interesting summer. That's one thing this deadline did, is it set up for some really interesting moves and some stars on the move for this summer. But the last point is, like, I mean, Sixers fans are really acting like this killed their championship chances, or they just departed
Not
with
this
some
year.
franchise legend. But they're acting like they departed with some franchise legend.
They
All right?
punted the
Like
career
Jared McCain
of a
had 23
promising
good
young
games.
player.
He had 23 great games.
But they punted the career of a promising young player for financial flexibility.
Didn't fit in with this particular team.
Like,
in this backcourt.
I just don't understand how you don't think that universally is bad business practice to punt on a kid's career for what I see is pretty much no reason to do so.
I think his value only would have got worse in the next 2 years, and then he would have left, or he's a restricted free agent, but they wouldn't have re-signed him, and then you get no value back. So at least you're getting something back.
So what happens when Tyrese Maxey pulls a hamstring 3 weeks from now and we're running Kyle Lowry minutes on the court, Sam? How are you going to feel in that very moment?
That's when you're going to want Eric Gordon back. No, I mean, look, guard depth is an issue right now, and I see people talking about VJ Edgecombe's and Tyrese Maxey's minutes right now, but like, Sixers need to make a push here. After the All-Star break, those guys are going to be playing a ton of minutes, as much as they were in the beginning of the season, because they need to. Because they
would be very nice.
The Cavs are coming. A lot of these teams are coming. The Hornets could make a run into the top 6 for all we know. There's a lot of teams coming right now, and the Sixers need to like, as much as the bench is going to be a factor, those guys are going to be playing a ton of minutes in the second half of the season, or really after the All-Star break. And if someone gets injured, they don't have a lot of guard depth. But
wouldn't it be nice to have a guy that can shoot 38% from 3, run all over the court, and at least give you an option of this? The last point, I know we keep doing the last point here. I want to talk about Quentin Grimes, man. I'm not sold that this guy's like a for sure part of this team, and he now has to be. You basically have to give him whatever he wants in free agency. I understand that he's a cleaner fit for Nick Nurse's system. It's been like 2 months since I've seen this guy play a legitimately good basketball game, man. And he started the season unbelievable. He was terrific in the second half of last year, which, by the way, if you're going to grade Jared McCain on such a nothing scale, Quentin Grimes has to be held to that same exact scale, because what he did impacted winning even less than what Jared McCain did last year. But speaking about moving forward, I'm not cool with just being on the hook for whatever Quentin Grimes wants. We have to give him. This dude asked for $30 million last offseason. He's not worth a third of that as a basketball player. He's on an $8.7 million deal for this year. I'm not comfortable going far above that, and you're kind of now at the mercy of whatever this dude wants. You have to give him.
I'm not saying Quentin Grimes is a great player. He's better player than Tyrese Maxey right now.
Tyrese Maxey?
Oh, sorry. He's a better player than Jared McCain right now. Almost popped the vessel there. Can you agree with that? He's a better player than Jared McCain right now.
Yeah, but he's 26 and Jared McCain's 21.
I know. I'm not talking about that for the future, though. I'm just saying, like, when people are saying Quentin Grimes isn't the answer, Quentin Grimes has struggled for a couple months now. He had a good game the other night, but he struggled for a couple months now. I can see him getting back to that version, playing a complementary role as a bench guard, which is what they need. They need some on-ball creation coming off the bench when guys like Maxey or Edgecombe sit. So I can see him getting back to playing at a great level, because we've seen it, even if it was empty stuff last year. He had a great one with the Knicks. Like, we've seen Quentin Grimes be a contributor on good teams that can win. So I'm not selling my Quentin Grimes stock. I don't think he's worth what he thinks he's worth, or what he was asking for this summer, but nobody's going to offer him that across the league. So I think they're going to come to an agreement where he has a role in this team as a kind of a backup creating guard.
Like, I'm not saying I'm completely out on Quentin Grimes. He's absolutely an NBA player. He's absolutely like a rotational guy. My problem with Quentin Grimes is I think Quentin Grimes thinks he's much more than that. And when you have
a lot of guys do.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of guys that are completely content playing their role, doing their thing, and I don't think Quentin Grimes.
I don't feel like his attitude, or he's been stubborn with his role or anything. I think he's played it well. He's struggled with his efficiency over the last couple of months and struggling to make shots. I don't think.
What's his true shooting percentage, Sam Oshtry? I know he's shooting below 40% from the field as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I only looked at one player, but it's probably not great. All right, let's keep it moving here. Went long on the Sixers, almost 30 minutes, but we had a lot to get off our chest. So keep the comments coming. I know there's a lot of them. If you want to put some good ones up, Sean. I was getting a lot of hate online yesterday. I mean, people were just being really mean to me, not nice, online to me yesterday.
Yeah, the internet has a way about that.
They sure do. And
I'm seeing some Grimes skepticism in the comments as well. I appreciate that. Shout out to our guy Zero Dark 26. Lowry ain't playing. He shouldn't, but they are now in a much more likely world where he will play.
There's no scenario where he plays, even if you only have one creator on the floor at a time, and even if that creator is VG Edgecombe, it's like Kyle Lowry's never playing real minutes.
I want to throw this question before we move on. Would you trade for PG if you were an NBA GM? So the suspension obviously changed things. It changed their financials. I think Kelly Oubre is probably not on this team if Paul George didn't fail that suspension purely for the finances of things. How much do you think that shook up what their intentions were to do at this trade deadline?
I think it made it easier. I mean, I think it made a lot of things easier where they didn't have to do as much maneuvering to get under the tax and duck that tax. So I think it actually helped them in some ways in terms of just navigating the financials of it all. I didn't think an all-in move was going to come before that. But the Paul George suspension, I didn't really think some all-in crazy move was going to come after that. Like they expect Paul George to be back healthy in mid-March and to make a playoff push. And that hasn't changed at all. They just have to win enough games with the core they have now to kind of be in that top 6, top 5, even maybe get a home playoff series.
Yeah, I largely agree there that I think like in the I kind of had the take right away that this is a blessing in disguise from the financial aspect, which got quite a bit of heat and hate as well in a similar light there. But that is how I feel from the financial. It's just maddening to me that we have to continue talking about this from a financial lens. Like, I will not put up with the Sixers acting like we're this stupid of like, oh, well, we had to do that to pave a lane for Dominic Barlow. No, you didn't. Like, you straight up did not. From a roster standpoint, from a money standpoint, like, you're not just going to lie to me. The way that they very clearly have in all these PR twists is quite offensive to me directly. I put the hours in Spot Rack. The Sixers fan base is one of the more educated in all of basketball, man. Like, you can't just pull a fast one like this.
Yeah, I'm with you. And educated and feel deep attachment to players who have played a certain amount of games. It almost reminded me of the VG Edgecombe thing a little bit, where it's like everyone was just furious at the thought of even trading VG Edgecombe for Giannis Antetokounmpo, a guy that has only played 40-something games for this franchise. And I love VJ, his future and everything, but like we're talking about Giannis here, it just people get attached. People get attached quickly. In this city.
You're right in your overall point there. The thing that I will and we'll leave it on this. I know we keep trying to transition from the Sixers. Like, I still will stand on, I just don't think this is the way you run a successful basketball franchise, is by moving on from promising young players that have shown flashes. Like, I just don't agree with that being the right way to build out.
Yeah, well, I mean, VJ's way different. VJ's ceiling is 10x what Jared McCain's is, but that's a different conversation because you'd potentially be getting back one of the best players over the last 2 decades in the NBA in Giannis. So that's a whole different conversation, but I agree with you. I think a patient developmental approach is the right approach. Draft your guys, build them, and grow with them instead of making these like all-in risky type moves.
And then trade them for the 28th overall pick in the draft, you know?
It could be 24. The Rockets could easily be like, I mean, the Rockets could easily be a first round out. They could slip in the standings. I mean, it could be a 22nd, 23rd pick. You never know.
Wow.
What was Maxey? 21?
21, yeah.
All right, we're in Maxey range now. Let Daryl Morey do his thing.
He's also
the guy that found Jabari Walker on the 2-way, Dominic Barlow on the 2-way. I would trust him more than most to find unheralded talent in the draft or in undrafted free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I trust Daryl as a drafter. I still don't think this is good business. I don't think moving on from a young player for these reasons is an adequate way to run a team. And I do think in the long haul that you do pay for this. Like, it's maddening to me that this is how things went down. Maxey's an anomaly. If there was an NCAA tournament that year, remind you, this was like the COVID shutdown season where he shot 30% from 3 on a very small season. If that was a full year, if there was an NCAA tournament, that dude's a top 10 pick. Like, there's no doubt in my mind about this. The Sixers got lucky. If there was not a global pandemic that year, Tyrese Maxey's not a member of the Philadelphia 76ers.
I mean, like, yeah, if this and if that, there's a lot of things. If Mike Muscala made the shot,
also
then Maxey isn't, or missed the shot, whatever, then Maxey's not a Sixer. There's a lot of things. That's just the way the league and life works. All right, let's keep it moving. And we're going to rally off and kind of discuss and give our grades for a ton of trades that happened over the last 2 days. Wow. Anthony Davis. I mean, there was a ton, but there was one that broke about 30 minutes before we got on live here, and that was the Clippers-Pacers trade. So just to outline it here, the Clippers are trading Ivica Zubac to the Pacers in return for Benedict Mathurin, a 2026 first-round pick that's protected 1 through 4 and also 10 through 30, and a 2029 Pacers unprotected first-rounder. So those are really interesting protections that I'll explain in a second. But what were your initial reads on that deal? Because it seems like quite the overpay for a guy like Zubac when you think about, we're going to talk about the Anthony Davis trade in a second, but Anthony Davis wasn't even traded for that much.
Yeah, I mean, and you're a big Zubac guy, so I'm surprised to see you lead with what an overpay it is. It's a lot that they gave up. I see a very clear path to this Pacers team being right back in the top of the Eastern Conference mix next season. Like, if they get a top pick, if they can get AJ DeBansta and you're pairing him with Tyrese Halliburton, who, by the way, I know he put up a ton of points. I watched that BYU game last night. Darren Peterson is absolutely should be the number 1 pick in this draft is what I'm coming to the clear realization of. There's some weird stuff with him as well, but not to get sidetracked. To keep this about the Pacers directly, you get a top 3 pick, you get Zubac, and Tyrese Halliburton comes back. That team's a contender again. So I see the vision as him being like the long-term pairing. I think they're going to do some pretty sweet stuff as far as the pick and roll. It surprised me. Obviously, the Clippers went into sell mode at a rate that our guy Jimmy Harden kind of spearheaded there. I'm surprised to see them get this active. I did like the move from the Pacers mindset there. And then if you're Kawhi Leonard, man, you got to be burnt right now.
It seems like a huge overpay for Zubac, who I'm a huge fan of. He's not quite the stretch big that like Miles Turner was when they run that pick and pop with Halliburton and Miles Turner, but he is a really quality big. He's
better.
Great. I do think he's better. Yeah, he's a better rebounder. I think his rim protection's even better.
Yeah.
I think he's also better in the short roll. He's become a really good short roll decision maker off those pocket passes.
And he's tougher, dude. Like, that's kind of one thing that I like about this is there's always like this softness to Miles Turner, and it's still that way with the Bucks of here. Like, Zubac will set the tone a little bit in a way that I think the Pacers needed.
I do think Harden really helped him a ton. I mean, Harden, if you're a big man, Harden is the exact guy you want as your pick and roll partner. I mean, Joel Embiid's best seasons were with James Harden too.
Clint Capella.
Yeah, I mean, he's unbelievable navigating the pick and roll. One of the best we've seen over the last few decades.
Ever, yeah.
But yeah, maybe ever. But this seems, so I think the fit's good. Like, I think he's going to be a great player. And the Pacers wanted a center. And this is a trade, obviously, for next season, not this season. But that pick this year is super risky with those protections and really interesting protections where let's just explain how lottery works. Before 2019, how the lottery odds would work was the 3 worst records in the NBA. The worst record had a 25% chance of getting the first pick. The second worst record had a 19% chance. And the third worst record had a 15% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick. But if you had the worst record in the league, you couldn't draft later than 4. So the worst pick you would get was 4 if you had the worst record in the league. Those lottery odds changed when they made the 3 worst records in the NBA all now have a flat rate, I think it's like 14, 15% or something like that, where they all have the same chance of landing the first overall pick. And they also changed that if you have the worst record in the NBA, the worst you can draft is 5. So that means the Pacers, who the kings of the worst record in the NBA with 17 wins now, but the Pacers are right next to them with 18 wins.
Your New Orleans Pelicans not far behind.
They're there too. If they finish with the worst record in the NBA, they still could have the 5th pick and have to give that pick to the Clippers. So that just feels like a huge price to pay, a potential 5th pick in the overall draft for Ivica Zubac and a 2029 first rounder, where it's like that's a few years down the road. Who knows how everything shakes out from them? It just feels like a lot to get your big that you want to pair with Halliburton and the rest of your team for next year. But the flip side of it is, to their logic, I think they look at this draft and go, there's only 4 guys we would really want as franchise-altering players. And that would be, of course, Darren Peterson, AJ Boozer, and Caleb Wilson. Wow. So I think I'm not saying I think there's a huge gap between 3 and 4. Not that I've done all my draft prep, but there's a huge gap between those top 3 and then Caleb Wilson. But I think the Pacers are looking at like this, like, all right, if we got the 5th overall pick, we're all right with giving that up. Yeah, it would be a nice piece, but it's not a win now ready guy the way that if we keep our top 4 picks would be. And then if it's outside the top 10, which it wouldn't be, that would be wild. Then of course it goes or it goes back to the Pacers too. So it feels like an overpay, but I also get it from the Pacers perspective of like, yeah, we're going to tank. We're going to lose as many games as possible. We're going to have one of the 3 best odds to get the number 1 overall pick. And hopefully that pick's in the top 4. And if it's the slight chance that it's number 5, then that kind of sucks. But we wouldn't have gotten one of our best guys that we wanted anyway to pair with the Haliburton, to pair with the Zubac. So it's an overpay on the surface, but if the Pacers get the lottery luck that they're obviously hoping for, then the gamble pays off, and this Pacers team is set up to dominate the East for a long time.
Yeah, no, 100% there. I will note from the draft perspective, I would not throw Caleb Wilson quite in that mix right there.
I think he's largely considered like the fourth best prospect there, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. I would set my personal line as I think that top three should be viewed in different light, and look a little beyond that. Like Kingston Flemings of Houston is sick. Keaton Wagler looks good. This is a good draft, and they are putting a risk on that. I mean, the wider scale, another point that I would make here, if we're going to talk about maximizing value, and I'm Daryl Morey right now, I'm trading that Clippers first round pick this summer for something like notable. And you can absolutely get something. I see no world where this Clippers team like remains in the dregs. They're clearly plotting, they're clearly planning, and they're clearly going to spend that pick. If you want to talk pick versus player value right here, that draft pick currently is going to be way more valuable right now than it will be like at the time of that draft pick. I'm finding a way to move that.
And that's why I think the Sixers could have gotten the mix for Zubac too. And of course, it's like if Zubac is there and Embiid isn't there, but we'll see how this season plays out. But like I would have wanted the Sixers to get Zubac because I'm a huge Zubac fan, and that felt like they had the cards because they own the Clippers pick. But you're right, that is it was always going to be a valuable pick because everyone knew the Clippers were going in this direction. But that is a super valuable pick, and from the Clippers perspective, they're going full rebuild mode. And it's like, what do you do with James Harden now? I actually don't think they were going to trade Zubac. They were like trying to go this direction if they weren't offered what they were offered. But when they were offered that haul from the Pacers, I think they had no choice. Because here's the thing about the Clippers right now. They don't own their pick in 2026. Do you know who owns it?
Thunder.
The Thunder own their pick in 2026. Now, this Clippers team that had been the best team in the league over the last 2 months just lost 2 of the 3 best players. They're going to be awful now. Probably finish in top 10, have a top 10 pick. And now the Thunder get a top 10 pick. So the Clippers shouldn't want to lose a lot this year, but it feels like that's the only direction that they're headed. And do you shut Kawhi down? How does it all play out from there? Kawhi's obviously going to ask out or be traded this summer when he's 1 year left on his deal before he can become a free agent in the summer of 2027. But it just feels like they're entering the rebuild, but it's the smart thing to do. They needed to enter this rebuild.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'll also say on the other side of things, one of the trades that I pounded the table about, wrote for Crossing Broad, that very much think could have happened here is Jay Huff is just sitting on that Pacers roster. Send him something, man. Get Jay Huff. You can trade him Drummond in a draft pick, duck the tax. Woo, we get to hang our banner, duck the tax, and get an upgrade to the big man spot. Sixers didn't do that.
So let's stay on the Clippers here because, of course, they traded with James Harden. And we talked about this trade a little bit the other day, but let's go deeper on it, where James Harden was traded to the Cavaliers for Darius Garland, who went to the Clippers. So that's a young piece that the Clippers now have as they kind of accumulate assets and a bunch of picks to hopefully draft young players for their sake. And, the aspiration, potential suspension, punishment, whatever that looks like, is lurking too with this Clippers franchise. And who knows how that's going to play out over the next couple years. Hopefully in the next year, you would think the investigation would conclude. But is Kawhi going to be suspended, or the Clippers going to be docked certain picks? Or is there going to be a fine? That's all hanging over this entire Clippers rebuild situation. Like if they trade Kawhi, go somewhere else, is he more willing to, I don't want to use the word snitch, but kind of talk about what the Clippers did and how that happened? Probably not, because it would get him in trouble too. But it's all interesting kind of domino effects of this rebuild. But I do want to talk about this Harden trade, where Harden's now a Cleveland Cavalier. And the more I think about it, the more I love it for the Cavs.
I don't disagree with that. That was kind of my angle at the start. By the way, another quick take here. Jared McCain will be a better basketball player than Darius Garland.
I don't think so. Darius Garland's a 2-time All-Star.
And Jared McCain will be at some point down the line.
Real small guards who the Cavs realized you can't actually win with this guy paired in the backcourt with Donovan Mitchell. We got to get him out. Really struggled in the playoffs last couple of years.
Maybe more of the issue is the fact that Darius Garland couldn't get on the court himself for the past year and a half.
Injury is a part of that.
Yeah, huge part of it. But to not derail this once again, I like it from the Cavs perspective because I've been banging this table for a year and a half now that they just need to change up the identity, that I think they had maxed out what that team was in its current core. I do think James Harden is, for the same reason that we just talked about with Zubac, he's going to get more out of guys like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen in the way that I think is going to be very beneficial to that team. Mobley directly should be jumping for joy that James Harden's going to be a part of this offense here. I still think Donovan Mitchell's a killer. I give this Cavs team a chance. It is funny to me to say we can't get over the playoff hump. Let's bring in James Harden. But I do think like just viewing this in how he fits into this roster, it does make some sense. They had to try something, and I appreciate the desperation on their end.
I'm seeing a lot of people run with that where they're saying Darius Garland didn't help us get over the playoff hump. He struggled in the playoffs. So let's bring in James Harden. And I get the irony. It's like James Harden is maybe the most notorious playoff choker, sellout, whatever word you want to use to describe it in recent NBA history. So I get it. It's like Harden's not necessarily going to elevate your ceiling, but you weren't going anywhere with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell backcourt. That has been clear enough from the last 3 seasons when they've been paired together with only 2 playoff series wins. So it's worth switching it up. I'm not saying James Harden's going to bring you to the promised land, but you definitely have a much better chance with James Harden paired with Donovan Mitchell than you do Darius Garland. And we talked about earlier James Harden's impact on bigs and how great he's in the pick and roll. Like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and all those guys are going to benefit tremendously. And they also made an underrated move because it was Saturday night. It feels like forever ago at this point, where they got rid of DeAndre Hunter, who was having a bad season, 30% from 3, 42% from the field, brought in Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder, some backcourt depth. Keon Ellis is a great defender. So they got deeper and they got better. And the Cavs were huge winners in this trade deadline. But they also became the favorites to win the East. Do you think that's too far? Like, would you classify them as the favorites to win the East now? Because that's where the odds makers have them after these couple moves.
I do think that's too far. And I will throw out here the Cleveland Cavaliers, one of the teams that is paying more in luxury tax this season than Josh Harris has in the entirety of him owning the Sixers. But when speaking about the Eastern Conference outlook, I'm shocked to hear you dethrone your New York Knicks, Sam Oshtry, who, if I'm not mistaken, have now won 8 in a row.
I didn't say it. The odds on favorite. They're the odds on favorite, yeah.
I do think that is an overcalculation by odds makers here. I get they're splashy. They're absolutely going to be in the mix. Like, I give them far more of a chance today than I did a couple days ago after these flurry of moves. But I still, man, I think Jared Allen's probably the guy that I think they need to move on from. Like, if we're talking overlap in skill set and like level of, like, Jared Allen has a lot of the same critiques that I have about Miles Turner, with like the softness to him, that not quite kind of it being a dude that sets the tone. I think you're limited when those are your 2 bigs. They have, to their credit, like benched Jared Allen for stretches, and this happened like all last year, even when they were winning the most games in the Eastern Conference. I'm just a little skeptical. I think that's a guy that holds them back to an extent.
I don't think they're the favorite. I still think the Knicks are, and I think the Pistons would beat the Cavs in a series as they are right now. I mean, imagine the Pistons eating up that backcourt before James Harden was there, when it was Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. Pistons would have abused those guys just with their physicality. That would have been a bloodbath to watch. Obviously, James Harden helps that, but I can't bet on James Harden, even in a wide open East. I can't bet on James Harden to make a finals run when we've seen time and time again. We'll have a great game 1, a great game 5 in a second round series, and then game 7 will come along when you need him to be at his best, and he'll shoot 8 times, and he'll go 1 for 8 from the field, and he won't be aggressive. He'll look disinterested. And it's like the James Harden you've seen all season, even 2 games before, will disappear in the biggest moments in the playoffs. So I'm not going to bet on them, but I do think this team is as talented as any. Like, I think this team could give the Knicks a run for their money just in terms of their overall talent.
And that's the frustrating part about the James Harden experience here, is we talk so much about like averages and percentages when we speak about player of like, yeah, he's averaging 23 and 10. And when talking about like James Harden, obviously averages equate to the same number here, but his is such like he'll have a 40 and 15 game, and then he'll have a 12 and 6 game. And like those are the ebbs and flows that you're just going to take with him. It's maddening from a playoff experience. If I am going to make the selling point, though, there is a honeymoon period with James Harden where all of a sudden he doesn't want to step on toes. He wants to play team basketball. If the Cavaliers can get the honeymoon James Harden for this second half of the season and a playoff run here, maybe there's a world where something can happen. The truth always comes to light, but I actually
think that's kind of been overstated recently. I mean, it ended really bad with the Rockets and Brooklyn and his disinterest, but when he was on the floor for the Sixers, I didn't feel like it was like Harden being disgruntled or anything like that. Like, I thought like his playoff struggles are well documented, and obviously he was really bad in those latter games of the Celtics series when they lost and they needed him. But I didn't think he was disgruntled or anything. And I thought he was great, a great teammate for his entire run with the Clippers too. Like, I didn't think it was anything bad. It's just always a financial thing in the end. Of course, in the summer, in the offseason, it turned ugly with Harden and the Sixers because of the whole Daryl Morey liar thing. But I don't think it was like a James Harden being a bad teammate. I think that's been like really overblown. I actually think he's a really good teammate and he'll give you his best on the court. And he's really durable. He's constantly available. It's just for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a mental thing, whatever it is, it's just in the biggest moments, he's always floundered.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad teammate thing. I think he is largely a good teammate. And I also think it speaks a lot to a dude who's as isolation-centric in his game as he's certainly scaled that back in the later stage of his career. But teammates always seem to like him. And that's a tough guy to play with that needs the ball that much. And I do think it speaks to James Harden as a human being for guys continuing to like him when that's what they're asked to put up with. But what I do think there is this lack of dog mentality, determination of when your back's against the wall, that he does not quite have that mental resiliency that shows up in the playoffs year after year. And we see the guys that rise that moment, and we see the guys that do not. And I do think we have enough of a sample size to declare which side of that category James Harden falls.
The Cavs are the only team in the league who have a pair of teammates averaging 25 points per game. That's James Harden and Donovan Mitchell. So, I mean, they obviously have a pretty great duo there. And, of course, their bigs duo is pretty awesome, too.
Don't count Maxey and Embiid?
Are Maxey and Embiid on that list?
They should be. I believe off the top of my head, I know Maxey's averaging 29 point something, and I believe Embiid's at 28.
Oh yeah, you're right. How did I miss those two?
Yeah,
that's a good call by you. How did I miss those two? I was looking at the scoring list earlier, and I just completely glossed over them. All right, so thanks for the correction on that. Let's move on to another trade that happened a couple days ago. At this point, I can't even remember when. But the Mavericks traded Anthony Davis and some other pieces, Jane Hardy, D'Angelo Russell, Dante Exum, to the Washington Wizards for Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, Malachi Branham, Marvin Bagley, 2 first-round picks, a 2026 Thunder first-rounder, and a 2030 protected Warriors first-rounder, and 3 second-rounders. Who do you think was a winner or loser in this trade? Did you like this for either side?
I feel pretty neutral. I like it more from the Wizards side of things that they're at least trying something, man. And I do think you didn't have to dig into your core pretty significantly. I like AJ Johnson, but I don't think his ceiling is ridiculously high as a player by any means. It was a mistake for Milwaukee to move on from him in the first place, which was the Kyle Kuzma deal. But nonetheless, for this specific deal, the Mavericks just had to turn a page, man. You had to put an official end to the Nico Harrison era. You didn't maximize your value on what you got for Anthony Davis. What you are able to do now is fully turn a page and say, this is the Cooper Flag era. This is where we're building from here. Mistakes were made in the past, but we cannot fix them, and we're at least moving forward. From the Wizards' perspective here, they're at least going to be a fun watch moving forward, man. I like Bilal Coulibaly. I like Alex Sarr. I like Kayshawn George. They've got some intriguing players that are on that roster there. And then you pair that with a guy like Trae Young and Anthony Davis being a pick-and-roll partner on the outside. Bub Carrington, another dude that I believe in there. So they've got a lot of pieces. I think the Wizards will at least be interesting next season. You can keep Davis sidelined for basically the rest of the year, and then next year can be the push. So it doesn't massively move the meter or fire me up from either direction, but I get it from both sides and like the Wizards taking the swing.
I love it from the Wizards' perspective, and here's why. The lottery odds, when they changed in 2019, which was in the aftermath of the process and the tanking that the process kind of started, I guess, if you want to say, but everything that happened with the process forced the NBA's hand to reinvent the lottery odds. And so
after they ruined the process, the NBA directly did.
Sure. But they flattened the odds where all these teams, the top 3 teams with the worst record, had the same odds of landing the first overall pick, which made it much harder to land, of course, the number 1 overall pick or a top pick. And so lottery luck became much more difficult to come by, whereas you're the worst team, you're probably going to get one of the top picks. That hasn't happened for the Wizards. So they were forced to kind of accelerate a rebuild. And the Jazz are really in this conversation too, where they did the same thing with Jaren Jackson, which we'll talk about in a second. But both those teams had to force an accelerated rebuild because they didn't have lottery luck. The Wizards picked number 2 overall 2 years ago, but it was the worst draft in modern NBA history. And they got Alex Sarr, who's an incredible player, by the way. He's having an unbelievable season. Him paired with Anthony Davis is going to be incredible. Some of the best, maybe one of the best rim protecting front court duos in the NBA. But still, it was one of the worst drafts where they got number 2 overall pick. Last year, it's a great draft. They got the number 6 pick. The Jazz get the number 5 pick in a draft where the top 4 were really these franchise altering players. So now what the Wizards were forced to do is you have your young core, and we're going to get one more bite at the apple because Anthony Davis and Trae Young aren't going to play the rest of this season. So you have one more bite at the apple in the 2026 lottery odds. You hope that's a top pick, a franchise piece. And then you acquire these veterans that you bring in, and we're going to start competing next season for, at the very minimum, a playoff spot alongside flawed veterans, but really good players still, like even if they have their flaws, injuries, contracts, whatever it is. We're bringing those guys in. We're not giving up a lot. Like we look at what the Wizards had to give up. It wasn't some marquee draft pick. So they didn't give up a lot. And they got these veterans to pair with their young core they can now build with. And they one more bite at the apple for the top draft pick. But that accelerated rebuild is the right approach because of the lottery odds changing, where it's just much harder to get a top overall pick. And you can't just be horrible forever and keep hoping that you get one of these top picks when it's really 5, 6, 7, whatever it is, even if you have the worst record in the NBA. And that's just the reality of it. It kind of proves that those tanking rules have worked to an extent, that forcing these accelerated rebuild. But I love this move from the Wizards.
Definitely didn't fix the tanking issue. The team
still did a little bit, because like the Wizards and Jazz are now two teams that can't tank for that long. They tanked for a couple years, and now they have to change their approach because they can't just keep hoping for good lottery luck when they haven't got it.
Or if they'd actually gotten a first overall pick in any of these seasons, then all of a sudden you build forward from there. By the way,
that's the point. That's the point. You can't just hope for that. If you get that usually ends your tanking anyway, because you have a guy like Cooper Flagg to build around. Or if you don't get that, you're forced to accelerate a rebuild, which is what they did.
You think there's less tanking now than there was 10 years ago?
Well,
definitely not.
Well, let me just say the second half of the season is going to be really ugly because there's a lot of teams that are tanking for the top pick. But I think this is a unique year. I do think that the teams are looking at the Jazz and Wizards moves and are going, this is an accelerated rebuild when we're getting good players, former All-Stars who are flawed, so we don't have to give up that much because there's not a lot of value for them across the league. And in return, we're getting these players who we can pair with our young core, and we still have one more bite at the apple, which the Wizards and Jazz have in the lottery this year. When you look at next season, Wizards and Jazz, those two teams aren't tanking. The Pacers are going to be back in the mix. The Mavs should be better. Like, there's not going to be as many teams tanking moving forward, I feel like.
I think you're wildly wrong on that. That I think we see tanking at a more regular rate than ever before, and no,
it doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work. It's stupid if teams are doing that. It's not the right approach, which is why I love what the Wizards are doing so much, because they're taking the right approach. Tanking forever doesn't work anymore. It doesn't.
But teams are always going to take the risk of, if I can get one of those special players, that matters so much there. Teams are always going to do that, no matter what protection is that you do put on it. By the way, I could not let this slide in your rant right here. You did not just slip Ace Bailey into a surefire franchise-changing player, did you?
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to if I did. Absolutely not. I was saying that they could get a franchise player in this draft, and like that's their goal. They don't have one now, even though they have a lot of good veteran pieces: Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., of course, who they just acquired. Like, those three are unbelievable pieces to build around a huge front court. And then you have guys like Keontae George and Ace Bailey as part of that. But no, he's not a franchise-altering player. I misspoke if I said that.
I thought I heard you slip in the top 5.
No, I'm not Ace Bailey. I was a VJ Edgecombe guy.
You were, yeah. You were quicker to that than I was there. I didn't get weird on the Ace stuff until he got weird with Philly right there. But so let's talk about the Jazz trade as a whole. I like this from the Jazz perspective. And the reason that I do is they basically ate into all their cap room by making this trade with the calculation of there's not going to be a better player than Jaren Jackson Jr. on the market. And I do think that is fair. Now, the thing that I think makes a lot of sense here, sometimes when you can't build a good defense, it is better to build a big defense. And I think that is what the Jazz are doing here. Walker Kessler, a terrific rim deterrent, a terrific rim protector. He has a bit of a limited skill set outside of that. But I think having Walker Kessler as your anchor, sliding Lauri Markkanen up to essentially the small forward, play the 3, and having Jaren Jackson Jr., all three of them are pretty unique players in what their skill sets are. But I do see a world in which that trio, that front court does work. And dude, if they can get Darren Peterson, that team's gonna be cooking a little bit next year.
Yeah, I love that team. Like, Jaren Jackson Jr. is a former defensive player. Even if there's flaws with his game, he's a tremendous rim protector. Walker Kessler is one of the more underrated centers in the league, and the Jazz aren't guaranteed to keep him. He's going to command a market because he's a free agent this summer. And there's a lot of suited, like the Lakers need a center. They should try to be out of the DeAndre Ayton business completely. I guess the Pacers are now off the market for a center, but there's teams out there who want a center. So it's not automatic the Jazz keep him. But if they do, that is a huge front court. And teams like the Jazz are taking that right approach. Those are the teams I want to see have lottery luck. Not the Mavs, who were the last team in the world who deserved it last year. Teams like the Jazz, and the Wizards, who are taking the right approach of, we're ending our tank. We had a few years. We didn't have a lot of good lottery luck, but we're going to have one more bite at the apple, whether it hits or not this coming lottery. We're moving on from the tank. And I think you're going to see more teams take that approach.
Does it change your mind anything of the Sixers trade deadline, of this breaking news right here that the Sixers have signed Patrick Baldwin Jr. to a 10-day contract?
No, it does not.
Yes, nor should it. But yes, we do have that breaking news there. So yeah, shout out to Daryl Morey and Josh Harris for, digging where no one's looking. A guy that for sure will change the state of this franchise.
But just to go back to the Jazz trade with Jaren Jackson Jr., where that trade, just to read it out, they got Grizzlies traded Jaren Jackson Jr., John Concher, Jock Landale, Vince Williams to the Jazz for Walter Clayton, Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, Georges Niang, and 3 future first-round picks. The best pick in 2027 between the Jazz, the Cavs, and the Timberwolves. It's 3 bites at the apple. Probably none are going to be great picks, but you never know with the Jazz. 2027 Lakers pick, top 4 protected. That's going to be a bad pick because the Lakers should presumably get better with Luka. And the 2031 unprotected Suns pick. So it wasn't like the Jazz gave up, which who knows what that's going to be. But it's not like the Jazz gave up a ton, but I like it for the Grizzlies too, where they're going to trade John Morant this summer. There's no market for him. They're going to have to give him up for pennies on the dollar. But they got a ton of draft picks. They have as many future first rounders as anybody in the league. So I really like it from that perspective. But when you look at the Wizards haul, they didn't have to give up any real picks. It's a 2026 Thunder first rounder, and which is this coming draft. It's going to be a 28th, 29th pick in the draft, and a 2030 protected Warriors first rounder. So it's like that, all that for Anthony Davis. He was that diminished of an asset where, it was a lot of ways a glorified salary dump just to get rid of Anthony Davis. The Wizards are now going to have to sign Trae Young and Anthony Davis to some extensions. Trae Young's a free agent, so they'll sign him, and Anthony Davis is going to command an extension this summer. But I don't mind doing that because now you have a young team to build around. Who knows what happens in this draft? And then you have a young core in a wide open East where it's like, this team could be a 6 seed next year.
Yeah, they could be. They're going to be interesting. They're going to be worth watching in a way that they haven't been in a couple of years. So I give them appreciation for that. I respect teams taking a swing. So I can't really fall, like both the Jazz and the Wizards, I think, fall in the category of just making the most of the market where you can get these guys on sort of a, what their market value was. I think this is on the lower end. You're buying low and could potentially get a much better return. So I have to commend that.
Last trade I want to talk about with you, unless there's any others.
But couple off there in the mix.
All right, so the Bulls send Nikola Vucevic.
Traded everybody, the Bulls.
Yeah, they did, and they got a lot of guards back. I don't know what they're doing. One of the losers of this deadline, just a loser franchise as a whole. But the Bulls send Nikola Vucevic to the Celtics for Anthony Simons. Early impressions, winners, grades of that trade?
I do think the Celtics obviously needed a big man. Vucevic is a cone defensively, which is going to be interesting to see how that clashes with the Joe Mazzulla theology of how you play basketball right there. But I think it is worth the swing right there. Nehemiah Queta, I think, has been just fine for them, has been well above expectation, but he's not the pure center. Luka Garza, I also think, largely has been pretty solid for them. But having a guy like Vucevic, who is a veteran, has been around, is a good option to have. It was pretty clear to me, although he had kind of found his footing in the past month. Anthony Simons was not a guy that sort of was a Joe Mazzulla guy or was ever going to see a massive role. I'm very curious. I do think he's still a good player. I would like to see him find his footing, but there's a million guards on that Bulls team. But I guess just speaking from the Celtics perspective, they at least gave themselves a little bit more of a chance, man. This is still a gap year. They still duck their tax. Who knows what's happening with Jason Tatum, but they're going to be in the Eastern Conference mix. And I can appreciate a team doing both things here, of accomplishing their financial goals and giving themselves a better chance to win. Would be nice if Philadelphia reciprocated.
The financial goals were definitely a part of it too, but I also think they got better for this year, where they're not really looking at this year as a gap year. And who knows what happens with Jason Tatum, but they believe this team can compete in the East. And Anthony Simons was playing really well, especially over the last month or so. He's a sixth man of the year candidate, but they needed front court depth. And even though your guy Queta has been incredible, better than any of us could have imagined.
I imagined.
You're right, you did. Nikola Vucevic is kind of the perfect stretch big that Celtics want in their system, and they've had the last couple of years in Joe Mazzulla's system, where it's like a Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford type. He brings that stretch ability as a big, and he's having a really good offensive season, really last couple seasons, and he's improved as a shooter a ton. So he's a perfect pairing. So it's an expiring contract, which is Anthony Simons. It's what he was on. You're trading that for an expiring contract. Both these guys probably won't be on the team anyway next year. So I think it makes them better this year. I do want to know, I actually was thinking about this. I meant to bring it up earlier to bring everything back to McCain. You always talk about these players that I love, like Nikola Jokic, Jalen Brunson, and then Nikola Vucevic. When we were texting about the other day, the first thing you said was that terrible defender.
Yep.
When it comes to Jared McCain, you don't hear anything about how bad of a defender he is.
Well, guards and big men are different to me.
I think it is Jalen Brunson.
Yeah. The Karl Anthony Towns thing is related in that conversation. Like the part of my argument with Brunson is you've got two guys that are bad defenders, with it being far more important to me, the big man position. Like it is essential to me. My basketball theology, what I believe is it is essential to have a big man that can be an anchor of your team. I don't hold guards quite to the same fire as I think that there's things that you can do to cover it up a little bit more. But for Vucevic directly, I do think this helped the Sixers' playoff chances. If the Sixers get the Celtics in a playoff series, what's the over-under for Joel Embiid points per game in that series? I'm thinking it's above 35.
Yeah, I thought the Sixers would beat the Celtics anyway in a playoff series, even though the coaching mismatch might be too hard to overcome. But I think the Sixers definitely the more talented team, and even without Keita, it's actually two really bad defensive rebounding teams. The Sixers and Celtics both are. So that would be an interesting matchup. Who can take advantage of the offensive glass? Celtics are much better offensive rebounding. But I do agree with you. Joel Embiid would feast in that series, and the Sixers should be the favorite.
Yeah, 100% there. You said that's it for the trades you want to talk about?
Yeah, then there was one more as I was going through my notes here. I forgot. The last one to bring up is the Jonathan Kuminga saga is officially over in Golden State after years of rumors, speculation, beefs. Jonathan Kuminga has been traded. He was traded to the Hawks, him and Buddy Hield, in exchange for Kristaps Porzingis, and the Warriors also traded Trace Jackson Davis to the Raptors too. So Warriors had a pretty active deadline. It wasn't Giannis, which is what a lot of people were hoping for. The Bucks declined the Warriors' offer for Giannis, which featured, we believe, Kuminga, Draymond Green, and a ton of picks, a ton of future first-round picks. Bucks declined that, think they can get something more or better this summer. Where are you on the Warriors deadline?
This felt a more appropriate swing to me. That, like, from an organizational standpoint, I just did not think it made sense to go all in with. I appreciate them trying to do right by Steph Curry, but you just are directly sacrificing your future for this organization's going to fall off a cliff. Kristaps, when he plays, is still a good basketball player, man. Now, when he plays, it's become
when he plays,
right. It's become a much lesser rate. But Kuminga, like, could not be more clear. An organization, a player not seeing eye to eye. Like, I get taking this swing from Golden State's perspective. I think this was the right mix of you can talk yourself into this potentially working out and helping without completely mortgaging the future. So it felt a better move to me from Golden State than taking the Giannis swing there, even though obviously much different players and that Giannis would have increased their chances by a notable margin there. But I think that they should have kept the picks in the holster the way they did. So I like this trade from the Warriors' perspective.
It's just is a very meh trade for me. I mean, Buddy Hield wasn't anything special, but he was a good floor spacer. It's like when your goal, the only thing that was really going to turn you into a title contender, even give you a chance to win one playoff series in this West, was getting Giannis, and you don't get that. It's like, all right, you had to move on with Kuminga. Both parties had to move on. You're getting Kristaps Porzingis, who theoretically is a great big for the Warriors system, paired alongside Draymond, where Draymond's had to play a ton of five this year and over the last couple of years because they don't really have a big. So he is that perfect rim protecting big, and you can have Draymond, or even Draymond can guard fives, and Kristaps can be a floater, but Draymond can guard all types of positions, really 1 through 5. So he's the perfect big, and he's also a floor spacer as a shooter. So theoretically, Kristaps is this great big, and he's also paired back with Al Horford now, who they both were Celtics teammates the last couple seasons. The problem is Kristaps Porzingis never plays basketball anymore. So it's a nothing trade to me. It didn't do anything for the Warriors because we don't know what's going on with Kristaps. It's the illness. He hasn't played since January 7th. And it's this illness that was bothering him last year. And we just don't know. And we hope for the best that he recovers from it. But it seems like something that has been lingering for like a year now. And who knows if it's ever going to go away. So there's no reason to be high on Kristaps' future. And he's also a free agent after this year. So he's on an expiring contract. And who knows if anyone's going to pay him next year because of this illness and all the question marks surrounding him.
I do think Kuminga was one of the rare addition by subtraction situations, which less than him as a basketball player, just all the behind the scenes stuff that is leaked out into the open for what's going on. I think just having that breakup is something that's good for the Warriors moving forward. So I appreciate just taking a stab at it with that. A couple other I did want to throw in the mix here. Luke Kennard to the Lakers. Does that move your meter at all?
Look, he's a good shooter that you want to pair with Luka, but no. I mean, I was done with Gabe Vincent, and I
Yeah.
think JJ Redick was done with Gabe Vincent too. Just didn't do much for that Lakers team for me. So it's good that they got rid of him, but Luke Kennard, I mean, it's whatever.
Yeah, that's fair. I also forgot to slip in here. Trace Jackson Davies would also be a guy that I would have welcomed in Philadelphia as kind of a swing. They did not go that direction either. I want to bring up Cam Thomas was bought out or released by the Nets overall. Where do you think Cam Thomas falls? Is that a guy that like you would show any sort of interest in if you're a franchise?
I don't know. I mean, the fact that he was waived, right? I know it broke right before we got on.
Yeah, I believe waived was the official.
The fact that he was waived and there was literally no market for him, even as a salary dump, there was nobody would take him on, says a lot about how how the league views him as a player, which is not great. He's an empty stats guy, and he got really pissed when Zach Lowe said that this summer and started lashing out on Twitter. But it was not Zach Lowe saying it. He was saying it on behalf of how people across the league, the decision makers, view you. And he's an empty stats guy. He's an unbelievable scorer in bunches, like a microwave scorer who could help off the bench, like a glorified Jordan Clarkson, but a way worse defender and more of a ball hog. I just
tough description.
it doesn't. I don't know if anybody's going to pick him up. I don't think a contender will, but he's just not worth what he thinks he's worth.
Yeah, I think that final point is definitely true that he got a little Quentin Grimes syndrome that thinks he's a little bit more than who he is. But I have a bit of sympathy for Cam Thomas in the standpoint of like, how can he not have empty stats based on like the teams that he's played for and who he has surrounding him right here?
He doesn't impact winning. That's the point. It's like,
how can
what do you want to bring the guy on if he doesn't impact winning?
But how can you impact winning for that Brooklyn Nets team? Like how? Like,
I mean, yeah, it's fair.
I'm a bit sympathetic to Cam Thomas is all I'm saying. He definitely has his flaws. He's definitely far from the perfect basketball player, but I would like to see him actually get like a legitimate chance somewhere where there is a chance to impact winning and play proper basketball because he has not really been in a situation like that yet in his career.
That's fair. I mean, he was a rookie, I believe, on those like Harden KD teams. That's right when he came into the league and he showed flashes. It was right around then.
Yeah.
But then it was obviously all downhill from the Nets. Yeah, he hasn't had the ability to show anything on a real contender, but I think the league views him as a player who is an empty stats guy and doesn't impact winning. So that's why there's no market for him.
Still averaged over 22 points per game in 2 seasons. Like I mean,
he would have like 40 balls, and he's just like a classic bucket in like a pickup game, but in an NBA game, it's a little different.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to touch on the Chicago Bulls here. And less than diving into specific trades, I'm just going to read off what the Bulls roster looks like and want to hear what your reaction to this, Sam Oshtry. Anthony Simons, Josh Giddey, Colin Sexton, Zach Collins, Patrick Williams, Isaac Okoro, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Smith, Trey Jones, Rob Dillingham, Gershon Yabusele, Matas Buzelis. We'll stop there. What in the world are the Bulls doing, man?
They have no clue. They have no clue what they're doing. And we just talked about how great the front offices of the Jazz and the Wizards are and how they've handled their deconstruction phase and then their rebuild and how they're accelerating their rebuild now. What are the Bulls doing is the right question because nobody knows. They're just stuck in mediocrity. You need to go full tank. You have some decent players. Obviously, they got rid of Kobe White, but like Josh Giddey, Buzelis are 2 players that I really like. So, and you got rid of Vucevic. So it feels like you're going half tank, but not full tank. You need to go full tank mode at this point, and try to get the best pick you possibly can for this coming season or this coming draft. But they have no clue what they're doing. They're just stacked with guards. It's one of the most confusing rosters in the NBA. It's kind of like the Kings.
Yeah, no, the play-in tournament should for sure be changed to the Chicago Bulls, Miami Heat, and Atlanta Hawks Invitational there. The Bulls are right where they're supposed to be. I do like the Jaden Ivey swing, though. I do think that is a guy who needed a change of scenery. The body language was starting to get a little dark out there in Detroit, that him clearly not frustrated. I do see a world where Jaden Ivey can find himself, but he showed some flashes before he broke his leg. And Rob Dillingham's another dude that I think is worth taking a chance on. I refuse to believe the version of him that we saw in Minnesota, which was objectively a bad basketball player, is who he is. That I remember watching that guy like a jitterbug scorer at Kentucky and really believing. And mind you, Minnesota like traded up to get him, like really invested. So I kind of like taking a stab on some of these guys, but at the same time, like I like Kobe White quite a bit as well, and think that was a mistake to move. Like I don't know if any of these guys are directly better than Kobe White.
2 like under the radar pieces right there. Kobe White to the Hornets as a bench scorer. Hornets have been one of the hottest teams in the league right now. Their starting lineup is as good of an offensive starting unit that exists in the NBA right now. Adding Kobe White as a bench scorer, love that move from them. And then you're just talking about the Wolves too. Yeah, getting off Dillingham, but Ayo Dosunmu is a good player who's going to help your depth and your bench right now. And he's kind of in the backup guard role where they need some backcourt depth, and they got it there. So that's an underrated move too that I really like from the Wolves.
Last one I'll bring up here. Your New York Knicks, Jose Alvarado as an addition. I like this from the Knicks perspective. I won't lie. What's your thoughts?
Got off Gershon Yabusele, who had that player option last year or for next year. So it was really important they got off that. And then because of who they got in that trade, they were able to send him out and two second rounders for Jose Alvarado, who the Knicks been targeting for a while. I mean, how do you not love Jose Alvarado? He is he's just a dog. I mean, he's exactly every team should want. He's that type of player. He's a culture builder. His toughness. He's the guy who's going to swing a playoff game or a series even, just not even with his scoring, with his physicality, his defense, his pickup points, all that stuff is going to have such a great impact on the Knicks moving forward. So just a great pickup from them. And also Miles McBride is out until at least the playoffs now. So they needed some backcourt, some guard depth, and they got that with Jose Alvarado. Maybe Tyler Kolek will play a little more now, but they're going to need someone to pick up the load.
Yeah, he's a New York guy too. So Jose Alvarado going home a little bit right there. That is absolutely going to be a fan favorite. Hate to see good things happen to the Knicks, and I think that was one of them there. So it did have to shout that out. Sam Oshtry, do you feel any better? I feel even worse about the state of the Sixers after going through some of these.
I don't feel any different.
Well,
like I said, I don't think they got worse. I don't think they obviously didn't get better. I don't think they got worse. I don't think what has happened over the last 48 hours changes their outlook on this season. And then depending on how this season plays out, we'll decide a lot about the direction they're heading in next season and for the future. So we'll see how this year plays out. But it didn't change their standing in the East. The only team in the East that really got better significantly is the Cavs.
Yeah.
But Pistons made a couple moves that they got better. Knicks made a couple moves, but nothing drastic.
Well, I look forward to our 2031 reservation at Fogo de Chao here.
Might be 2040.
Maybe.
Real quick before we go.
Last point, you mentioned 2040. Jared McCain will be younger than Kyle Lowry in 2040.
I believe it.
Yes. Go ahead.
I believe it. Last point, we've been talking about Giannis last 2 weeks. And just another cycle. What is it? Last year's deadline, last year's summer, then this deadline where Giannis has just dominated the conversation and no trade has taken place. But it does feel like the Giannis trade is inevitable, and it's going to be a huge tug and pull between the Bucks. Shouldn't want him to play the rest of the season so they can have their draft pick in this upcoming draft. But does Giannis just have it in him where he really wants to play and he might demand that? So he shouldn't, but maybe it's in his DNA. So it's going to be a huge tug and pull, but it does seem like a trade actually will happen this summer, or at least after this season. I think there's a couple winners here and a couple losers who didn't get it done at the deadline. One of those is the Warriors. The Warriors not getting it done means they're never going to get it done because other teams' offers can be better, and the Warriors' offer can't really be any better this summer. Teams like the Heat, they're going to have 2 extra draft picks, 2 extra first rounders to offer up in a trade. Teams like the Knicks are huge winners. The Knicks had that exclusive window last summer. We're patient with their team. Now get to see this team actually play out. And if it doesn't make the finals, you're going to have to make major changes, and you probably make an all-in push for Giannis, and they're going to have more assets to do so. So with 2 extra first rounders. So the Knicks are huge winners by this Giannis thing getting pushed to the deadline. And maybe the Timberwolves have some more time to build up a better package. But any thoughts about how the Giannis situation ended?
Well, I do think we were both kind of the mindset that this probably extends till the summer, and that was kind of the cards we were reading here. I think the biggest winner is probably whatever Western Conference team isn't quite good enough come playoff time, whether that is the Spurs, the Rockets, the Thunder, whichever one of those teams is eliminated earlier than they expect to or they believe is adequate. They absolutely can be, the grandfather offer that wins the Giannis competition. We'll see how things play out. I think how the playoffs ultimately go down will have a direct impact on that. But that's where my mind went to. These teams that aren't willing to disrupt their outlook mid-season, which is understandable based on the success they're having, they now have every reason to get in the mix. And that's sort of how I foresee things going down.
It sucks we're not going to have another playoffs without Giannis. It's just another year. What is this going to be? 4 or 5 straight years where we're going to have a playoffs without Giannis really playing because he's hurt the last few that he's played in. But he's one of the best players in the NBA, so that's really rare to see. He's that impactful, but that's just the reality of the situation, which is, again, why we've been saying we don't understand why this didn't happen last summer, because now Giannis has wasted an entire prime entire season of the prime of his career, and the Bucks could have accelerated the rebuild even quicker if they got rid of the Giannis package or got a package back for Giannis last year. But the Giannis sweepstakes will go on into the summer. I think it's more fun that it actually goes into the summer.
Yeah, and the NBA loves this. They love the headlines. They love the rumors, love the drama right here. That's what this sport has become about, which is a bit maddening to me to some extent, but you got to play the game. So we'll roll with it right here on the Pace and Space podcast. Sam Oshtry, any final thoughts from you?
I don't think so. I think that's it. It was a great trade deadline show. We got our most viewers I think we've ever got live. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We appreciate everyone commenting. If we didn't get to your comments today, we'll get to them next week. We'll be back. After the deadline will be over, we'll back to be playing good basketball. We have the All-Star break coming up next week. We're going to keep rolling all season into the playoffs, and we'll talk to you next time.